Hi, Jamie. How are you?
I'm good, thanks. Welcome, everyone. My name is Jamie Myra. I'm the Executive Director here at Pulmonary Hypertension Association of Canada. I am coming to you today from Vancouver, where I'm joining you from the unceded traditional territories of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh Nations. I really want to thank everyone for attending this year's National PH Community Conference. It's our second virtual conference, and there are over 350 people registered from across the country and several international guests out there too. So welcome to all of you. We're very glad to have you with us, not just today, but throughout this whole week.
Yeah, for sure. And hello, bonjour, et bienvenue de la part du Conseil d'administration.
Hello, welcome on behalf of the board.
And I am joining you from Cambridge, Ontario, which is from the unceded traditional territories of the Haudenosaunee, the Anishinaabe, the Mississaugas, the Métis, and the Inuit people. So thank you, everyone. Merci à tous, et surtout à notre communauté francophone d'être parmi nous aujourd'hui.
Thank you for all our Francophone community, especially for being with us today. This session will be interpreted into French. So if you are there and if you need interpretation, there is a button at the bottom of the screen where you can pick your language of preference. The program throughout the conference will feature numerous sessions in French, and next Saturday, the closing plenary session will be also available in both languages. As always, PHA Canada is proud to operate in both official languages, and those are our two official languages, and Kim and Milena are always there for you.
A little translation to English, just letting you know that we are thankful for all of you here, and especially our Francophone community, and that this session today will be interpreted in French and in English. And next Saturday, our closing plenary will also be in French and English. And PHA Canada is always proud to serve you in both English and in French, as we are, as French and English are two official languages, and Kimberly and Milena are always there to help you. So please reach out to them for your needs.
Thanks, Nicole. So that was a good introduction to some of the features here available on our Zoom session today. So hopefully you've had a chance now to find that button on your menu screen below that allows you to go between the English side or the French side, whichever you may need, depending on who is speaking. Today's session will primarily be in English, but next week we'll have folks speaking in both English and French, so everyone might need, most people will need a little bit of interpretation help. The other thing you've got at the bottom of your screen here is a chat feature. You can see people talking to each other already. Hi, Brooke. Welcome, everybody. Please feel free to talk to each other in the chat box. There's also a raise your hand feature, which might be handy later when we get into our Q&A with the panel. And then there's a Q&A question box where you can post questions as well. So lots of ways for you to interact both with each other and with the panel throughout the session today. All right, well, we have a very exciting program for you that explores the possibilities of living with PH, whether you are a patient or a caregiver. And of course, we will also explore the various new PH research, things to learn with sessions featuring experts in CTEPH, in PAH, and in pediatric PH throughout today and next week. Next Saturday, we will have that closing conference plenary with our favorite session on new and emerging research. It'll be led by Drs. Malachuk and Mehta, both members of PHA Canada's Board of Directors and Canadian PH Medical Committee. They will be giving us a bit of an overview of the research and care and treatment landscape here in Canada right now. And then they will also be leading a discussion on new and emerging research with Dr. Provencher from Quebec, Dr. Thakar from Alberta, Dr. Bruner in BC, and Dr. Voorhees, pediatric specialist in Calgary. I heard these folks speak this week at our annual PH Medical Think Tank, and I know that you're going to want to be here with us next week to hear them talk about their research, each other's research, all the other interesting things that are going on, from new pathways being explored, new potential treatment models, and just better ways to treat and to manage PH for various different populations. There's going to be an opportunity for you to ask questions. So this is not just a chance to watch a recording after the fact, but to actually come to the session and ask your questions directly to the doctors and the researchers with this next week. So we hope you'll come back and join us for that session next week. The program has also really taken into account the feedback that we heard in the community survey last year. We released that report earlier this month, the impact of PH on Canadians. You can get it on our website in both English and French. And but there's a lot more to the survey actually than just what's available in that report. And we're really already using that information to learn about how we can better serve you as a community, make sure that you're receiving the right information and the tools that you need to live well every day. And so really proud to see new sessions at this year's conference on topics like exercise and nutrition, which we're going to do later today, financial health for folks living with PH or affected by PH next week, and also a very special session on patient and caregiver relationship building. So make sure that you go to that session sign up page that you've been emailed. So after you registered for conference, you have received a few emails now encouraging you to click on a link that takes you to the page that outlines every session in the program and who all the speakers are, and allows you to decide which sessions you want to go to and personalize your own agenda. You click through the links to register with just your name and your email address, just like you did for today. And you'll be able to receive automatic notifications for each of your sessions from Zoom, so that you know exactly where you need to be for all of your sessions. And then the other thing that you will find this week is, of course, our in-person community events, which Nicole's going to talk a little bit more about. If in the meantime you wanted to learn more about all the speakers on the agenda, like as you're deciding which sessions you want to go to, then you can also on the conference website find a link to all the speaker bios, so you can learn about all the various speakers that are going to be with us this week. All right, Nicole, over to you.
Yeah, so one thing I just want to say is that we always know conference isn't just about the educational sessions. A lot of the times most of the time it's about connecting with your community and building relationships with the other people who understand you most. And there are no other people who understand us most than those who also live with PH. So we encourage you to take time in the virtual sessions to talk to each other. And I know you do. And I know there's such a great support within this Canadian community, one that I probably don't think there's another one that exists like this. Maybe there is, but so yes, take advantage of that. There was an icebreaker in your welcome kit or in your conference kit. If you registered, you would have gotten one. And there's a virtual PH bingo and a photo booth. So check out your conference kit for your, Jamie has it up and so do I. And I think I have a bow tie or something here.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah. So we encourage you to fill that out. And so what it asks you to do is just, there are different little options on there, like find someone who has a dog. Me, I have 4. Someone who has lived in another country. So those are just things, and it just encourages you to reach out to other PH patients. And so funny story is Kathy Downey messaged me one day out of the blue and asked me various random questions, like if I like country music, and I had no clue because I did not get this yet. So I was like, first I thought maybe she was spammed or hacked. And so I wrote her and I'm like, I gave her the answers and I'm like, what is this for? And then, coincidentally,
next thing you know, you're getting, your bank account's been broken into.
It was so random. Do you like country music? Do you like purple? So anyhow, I got it and then she explained it nonetheless. But anyhow, so that's just kind of a good way to connect with people. And so another cool thing is with this conference is that we have many local in-person events in communities across Canada. And so this will be the first time since 2019 that most members of the community will gather, and which is pretty cool. given this long absence of in-person. So, you know, we have events happening in Vancouver, Calgary, Winnipeg, Ottawa, Toronto, London, and York, PEI. So I will be attending the Toronto one next week. And if you know, you can attend, that would be great too. And I think you can check that out on the conference website. There's still time to host a small gathering. So just reach out to Darren if that is something you want to do. And we'll support you each step of the way. There's also a limited financial support available to assist people in attending those community events. So you can fill out a form on the website. And, you know, this financial assistance includes things such as gas money to travel to your closest event. Perhaps not like if you're in Ontario and want to go to the Vancouver one, we may not be able to help with that one.
Yeah, we might not be able to include plane tickets, but you know, it's not easy sometimes to get around. If you just need a little bit of help to get to your closest event, then we will try our best to help as many people as possible. I'm looking forward to attending our event here in Vancouver tomorrow. I'm asking everybody to do just like a little bit of a rain dance, or sorry, a sun dance, because right now it's not looking very summery outside, but tomorrow we're supposed to get some sunshine. So I'm really hopeful that we meet tomorrow at Garden Park in Vancouver, that we'll have a little bit of sunshine. We're gonna have, you know, basically like a little picnic in the park starting at 1 o'clock tomorrow. We've got board members and staff members and community members all joining, and I hope as many people who are around can make it out as possible. Diane Pearl, I'm looking for you out there. If you need a ride, you let me know. I'll come get you. I'll come get you. All right. Oh, what's up next? I'm gonna look at my notes here. All right. This is when we start thanking people. So the first thing I want to do is thank our conference organizing committee. Every year we bring together a group of people from the community to help us develop the program and plan for all of the different features that make conference so fun and engaging. And so this year we had an awesome committee from across the country. I really want to acknowledge and thank Michael Mayville, Lindsay Brochure, Jessica Callum, Jane Cernoski, Donna Downs, Kelly Gould, Joan Gibson, Jeanette McKean, Wendy Bedard, and Marion Brown. Thank you everybody for putting together just a really great program, really engaging week, and some really unique things. For instance, like next weekend's Super Kids and their fabulous families, which is a really special session that's going to be led by Jane Cernoski, who we all know can be very entertaining, and some teenagers living with PH, Bryn and Isabel. So 3 of them are going to lead a very special session just for families, and so we hope all the PH families, whether your kids are young or maybe a little bit older, will come out and join that group for just a really special session that they've got planned.
Nice.
More thank yous, Nicole.
Yeah. And so as always, we'd like to acknowledge and thank our sponsors who always make these events possible. We have our platinum sponsor, Janssen, and silver sponsor, United Therapeutics Corporation, UTC. Bronze sponsor is Bayer. And we also appreciate the support of our partners at HTAPQ, all of our volunteer speakers, and our in-kind sponsors who provide the mind-body sessions happening Monday to Thursday. So hopefully you can take advantage of those. And in those, in that we have Eccentrics avec Michel, Eccentric avec Michel, Love Light Reiki, and Mantas Yoga.
Awesome. I would be remiss if I also didn't take this opportunity to thank the staff team who worked so hard to put this event together. It really is a team effort with everybody pitching in one way or the other. So big kudos to Darren Fisher and to Kimberly Brunell, who have really led the development of the entire event. Our communication support from Milena Escadom, and then our administrative support in Vancouver from Elgin Lim and from Athel Adira as well. So thank you so much to our whole staff team. You're going to meet them again next week at the closing ceremonies. But in the meantime, just a big thank you to the team for all of their hard work. And then I also just want to take a moment to acknowledge that there's a lot of people who can't be with us today. For different reasons. There are families right now that are hurting from the loss of a loved one. There are those who are struggling with their health. There are those who are in the hospital. And so I just wanted to take this opportunity to let those folks know that we are thinking of you, that we send you our love and our strength through what can be very difficult moments, dark moments in the journey with PH. We've had some tough losses in the community recently. They're all tough, but sometimes they feel even more unfair than others. So I just really think when we gather like this, conference is so much about, you know, the hope and the positivity that exists in the world, but it's important to also acknowledge you know, the difficulties that come with it, and to just really be there for each other as much as we can.
Yeah, and I think in this community, I don't know, for some reason, because we're so close and we know a lot of people, we know a lot of names, even if we don't know them, we know their name because we've seen the name come up, and it just hits a bit harder. You know, and especially living with the disease, you know, it can really affect us. So I appreciate you acknowledging that.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
And you know, the longer you live with PH, sometimes the more loss you have to experience. It can be really
Right,
hard.
yeah.
Which is why I think the sessions that we have to offer this, you know, today and throughout conference are important, because they really help people, I think, to live with some of those difficult feelings that can come up throughout the journey with PH.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. So before we get this great open plenary session going, we just wanted to do an introduction to a very special group of people, PHA Canada's ambassadors. And so you've heard the term, and you know that they are community leaders who are champions of PHA Canada, and they help us succeed in empowering the PH community through support, education, advocacy, and awareness, and of course, research. We're excited to introduce you to the team today, and includes several new ambassadors, which is pretty exciting. As some of you know, before I became chair, I was an ambassador shortly after I was diagnosed in 2013. I got roped in somehow, and I never left. So I started being an ambassador, and I did a couple of things at Queen's Park, a couple of advocacy things there, and you know, I did some interviews, I educated, I advocated, and I'm still here doing the same thing in a different role.
Awesome. All right, we've got our ambassadors coming up to join us. Ambassadors, if you're in the audience, please raise your hand. It'll help Kim to find you and bring you up on stage. We're going to give our ambassadors an opportunity to introduce themselves in just one moment. I'm so excited because baby Luca's with us. I can see the chat exploding, Jane. We're also happy to see all three of you. All right, well, we'll get to you in just a second. All right, I see almost everyone. Okay. Well, we're going to start actually with our most senior ambassador. Ambassadors, turn your cameras on. Dawn, Sonia, Carl, please turn your cameras on. Sonia, we are going to go to you first for just a little brief introduction. Say hi, tell people where you're calling from, and maybe tell us one thing you're looking forward to this week at conference.
Hi, I can't believe I'm senior. From Paradise, Newfoundland, and I've been with you guys now, I guess, as an ambassador 4 years maybe, and I look forward to everything about conference. I don't know if there's always the panel, always when we, you know, learn about what's upcoming and, you know, new research, because it's always it gives us hope, and I think without hope, if we don't have hope, we don't have anything. So that's probably the best part of it, but just everything, just seeing everyone's faces and, you know, learning little tidbits about things and people, and yeah.
Awesome. Great. Well, welcome all the way from Paradise.
Yay.
All right. Cernoski Gibson family, over to you. Who's with you?
Hello, Canada. This is Luke Cernoski, and he's coming to you from Ottawa. He is a couple of weeks old, and he's looking forward to all the different sessions and the in-person event here in Ottawa at Britannia Park, June 1st from 5 to 7. Thanks for the shout out, Luke.
we got a little eye open even. Hi, buddy. Nice to meet you. And your grandma's there too.
Yes, you get 2 with 1 on this sign-in. I'm looking forward to the sessions where we are in smaller groups, and the topics are great. And I look forward to sharing ideas with the other people in the workshops.
Awesome. Thanks.
Big thanks to the staff for all the work in putting this together, and Jamie for your leadership. And I'm really looking forward to the whole week.
Awesome. Thanks so much. So glad you can be with us today. All right, now we're going to introduce our brand new ambassadors who are joining us for the first time. We're going to start on the West Coast. Carl.
Good morning, everyone. Yes, it is a little overcast and raining out here today, but we're hoping for better things tomorrow. We'll see how that all works out. But yeah, here on the West Coast, I'd love to see that we are definitely coast to coast, Sonia. There we go, right? I'm glad that we don't have to do morning sessions out in Newfoundland, because that would mean I'd have to get up like at 3 a.m. and I'm just not a morning guy. What can I say? Anyway, looking forward to the conference. I'm hoping that everyone finds a session that touches them and they can join and get some real benefit out of this, because we are a community. So glad to be here, and I'm looking forward to doing whatever it is an ambassador does. So thanks, Jamie, and everybody.
More of what you already do. Thank you, Carl. All right, and to Alberta next, we've got Kathy and Dawn Downey. I see you guys are on the move this morning. Hi, Kathy.
Hi, how are you?
Good. Oh,
We're just going to turn off our radio.
how are you guys doing this morning?
Yeah, we're on the move. We're just stopped at McDonald's to get a drink so that we can make it to our destination and me a pee break.
And you guys are coming to us from where?
We're in Cross Iron in Balzac, Alberta at the moment, the lovely metropolis of Balzac. And we are actually from Calgary. So we're happy to be ambassadors. I'm glad that I have my right-hand man with me. And we hope to just carry on a little bit more than what we were already kind of promoting, I guess, on our own. And we look forward to the sessions. Unfortunately, we won't see any today, but next Saturday we'll be there with all our props and ready to go.
Awesome. We look forward to it. All right. You guys have a safe trip today. Thanks for being with us this morning. All right. Over to you, Lindsay. Welcome.
Hi, everybody. I'm Lindsay. I'm one of the newest ambassadors here at PHA Canada. I'm very happy to be here. Yeah, I'm just looking forward to all the sessions and, meeting some new faces and just being a part of, the team and, diving in head first, advocacy and trying to support PHA Canada the best that I can. I had a transplant back in 2020. So for those of you that are kind of going that direction, I'm here to chat at any time. Yeah, and I'm also looking forward to the picnic in the park here in Ottawa on June 1st. So I'll be there along with Jane and a few other people. So you all are welcome to come out if you're in that area. But yeah, I hope everyone enjoys conference. And like Carl said, hopefully everyone can find a session that they're really interested in. There's a whole bunch out there. So enjoy, everybody.
Awesome. Thanks, Lindsay. And thank you to the new ambassadors who are a big part of planning this program. Carl, or as well, no, I can't even keep track of this year who was on the committee, and I just said your names. Anyways, all right, we're missing a couple people today, so just want to also acknowledge 2 more new ambassadors that couldn't be with us today. That includes Jennifer Bryson in York PEI. She will be hosting a community event as well. So check out the website for more details about that. And then also Jessica Callum, Jessie, as many of us know her, who is in Edmonton and whose daughter, Bryn, is graduating graduating high school, like right now today. So yay to Bryn. We'll be celebrating her a little bit more coming up in the plenary session. But welcome to Jessica and to all of our newest ambassadors. Watch our website, watch the newsletter, watch our social media channels, and you will be learning lots more about these new champions and PH leaders in the coming weeks. All right, thanks so much, everybody. We are going to send you back out into the audience. Nicole, thank you for being here with me to open up today and represent and bring good wishes from the board of directors. We really appreciate you and your leadership as well. All right, so now I am going to get us started on our opening plenary session. We're going to bring up our plenary speakers. So this session is going to be really a conversation, a discussion with some important people, or people I find important, that I love to hear talk, about the concept of patient empowerment. We talk about patient empowerment all the time in this work that we do. It's literally in our mission statement here at PHA Canada, where we say that we exist to empower the PH community through support, education, advocacy, awareness, and research. So what does that mean? What do we mean by empowerment? What is this special magic thing that is supposed to improve and create better lives for people affected by PH? A lot of what empowerment is for me is about capturing that lived experience of patients and making sure that it is used appropriately to develop effective therapies and policies that can actually create better outcomes and increase the quality of life of people affected by PH. So today we're going to have a very important conversation with a few folks and dig into this idea of empowerment, what it really means to be meaningfully involved in your own care, to be involved in research, to be involved in policy making, and like I said, it's going to be a discussion, so it's going to be pretty informal and casual. I'm going to first introduce our speakers, and we're missing one today who's going to be joining us by video. And then at some point, a little later towards, about half an hour or so, we're going to open it up, or maybe 45 minutes, we're going to open it up and have some discussion from you. So there's an opportunity for you as well to engage with this group of people and on this topic. We encourage you to use the Q&A function, and Kim will help us keep track of questions. And then along the way, if you actually really have a question or a comment that you'd like to say out loud to folks, then you can raise your hand and we can actually unmute your line and you can talk directly to the panel. So I'm going to start by introducing our panelists. We actually, one of our panelists couldn't be here today. Bryn Marks is a 17-year-old PAH patient from Edmonton, Alberta, who considers it an honor to be called a fighter, and in her own words has said that I am amongst a group of rare and wonderful people that have embraced me and cheered me on. Bryn believes that she was given this for a reason, and she will always give back to her community that has given her so much. So we really wanted to include Bryn in today's presentation. Of course, high school graduation seems like a good reason to be not with us live, but we look forward to bringing you words from Bryn during the discussion as well. We're also joined by Taria Morel. If you've been with PHA Canada for a while or the PH community for a while, you probably know Taria. Taria was diagnosed with PAH in 2012, shortly after giving birth to her son. Since then, she has been a PHA Canada staff person. She has worked as an ambassador, and she has volunteered. She works in health systems research and is happy to have the opportunity to lend her skills to the important work that we do here at PHA Canada. We are also joined by Joan Paulin, also no stranger to many of us here at PHA Canada and throughout the PH family. Joan's daughter Brooke was diagnosed with severe PAH in March of 2014 at the age of 24. She has always considered herself to be Brooke's primary caregiver, but Brooke also remains very independent, and that support has probably been more emotional than physical, but no less important than the other. Joan thinks of herself as an advocate within Brooke's journey, and in 2017, as an advocate, Joan became a PHA Canada ambassador, and then eventually served as became a board member just recently in 2021. So welcome to Joan as well. And last but certainly not least, we have with us today Dr. Jason Weatherall. Jason is an assistant professor at the Department of Medicine in the Division of Respirology at Alberta Health Services in Edmonton. He completed his education and clinical training at McGill University, the University of Alberta, and the University of Calgary. He completed a one-year PhD research fellowship in Paris, and then a Master's of Science in Clinical Trials from the London School of Hygiene and Tropical Medicine. His research focuses on clinical and patient-oriented research in pulmonary vascular diseases. He was most recently providing clinical services in Calgary and has now switched over to Edmonton. And in my experience is one of Canada's top advocates for patient-centered care and research. So welcome to Jason, to Joan, and to Taria, and remotely to Bryn as well. All right. So to get us started, hold on just one moment. I'm going to make sure I have all my notes in front of me. Apologies, too many sets of notes. All right. So we're going to start with just the question of what does empowerment mean to you? Why would we dedicate an entire session, the opening plenary of conference, to this idea of empowerment? And to start us off, we're going to hear from Bryn. So I'll just give Kim a moment. I know she was just getting the video ready. But we're going to start by hearing what Bryn has to say about what empowerment is, what it means to her, and why we would dedicate this session to it. Are you ready, Kim? It's not an easy thing to do, to share a video by Zoom.
No, this is not an easy thing to do.
It's not. Are you good, or do you want me to go to somebody else?
Continue on, please.
All right, well, that's fine. We can do that. Not a problem. All right, then I'm going to come to you next, Taria. What does empowerment mean to you?
Okay. I was so looking forward to Bryn's video.
All right.
I'm excited to see it. That's okay. I'm happy to start us off. So it's something that I've been thinking about a lot over the last number of years, for sure. I mean, through the pandemic, we've all had our choices restricted. We've all had, I think, to struggle a little bit more with the ideas of independence and what does that mean in the context of having to rely on other people for our own safety. In the last number of years, I got separated. I was in sort of a really difficult relationship. And I think as a patient, I really struggled with my own independence and thoughts about being on my own. I remember being in this moment where I was really thinking about, okay, I need to do this. I need to be on my own. And then I ended up in the hospital with a bloodstream infection for 10 days. And I had this idea that like, oh, I can't do this. I rely on other people. I can't be on my own. And then I ended up having to do it anyway. And I found through that experience that really like having to get my own place and set it up on my own and do solo parenting and then do that through a pandemic and then finding myself repartnered. I was so much stronger than I thought that I was. I had really put ideas on myself around what I couldn't do. And then when I was forced to do it, I think it became this like balance of independence versus knowing how to reach out for help and how to access resources and things and how to make accommodations for myself. And I think through all of that, I really like the word empowerment came up for me over and over again. Finding my own place was super empowering, and being able to do all those things was super empowering. And I think a big part of that for me was in reaching out to other folks and finding out how to make use of my community. And so in thinking about this question for this conference today, I think that was the big takeaway for me that I hope that people take is learning how to reach out to your community and finding all those places and the people who want to help you and making use of that.
All right, we're going to hear more about that, but I think we're ready to hear from Bryn.
Okay.
Hi everyone, my name is Bryn Marks. I am 17 and I was diagnosed with severe pulmonary hypertension in January of 2020. I'm so sorry that I can't make it to see you guys and your faces and being able to talk to you guys, but I'm graduating today, so yay! So I'm here to talk about empowerment and being able to inspire you guys. What empowerment means to me is going through my journey and being able to inspire other people and staying positive throughout their journeys as well, even though it may be difficult at multiple times during that. Just being able to inspire other people and tell them that there is hope for whatever they're going through.
Well, I think I speak for everyone when I say how inspiring I find Bryn to be. Her mom has been really generous in sharing, a lot of what they've been through. She was only, Bryn was only diagnosed a couple of years ago while in the midst of going to high school. And then while in the midst of a pandemic. It's just really, really impressive to see how much she's persevered and how strong she's been to just commit herself to getting through high school through all of that. So big congratulations to you, Bryn. We're all super happy for you. I hope you're really, really proud of yourself. And I'm sure you'll get to meet one of your new docs pretty soon, because Bryn will be joining your adult clinic, I think, there one day, not too far away, Jason. So that's pretty exciting.
Yeah, looking forward to it.
Yeah, awesome. All right, well, we're going to go to Joan next. So Joan, what about you? What do you think? You do so much for PHA Canada that folks only know just a tiny, tiny little bit about. So you might have a different perspective, but what does empowerment mean to you?
Well, I'm going to start by saying I think it's going to be really hard to follow Bryn. But I'll try, and I'll give a different perspective. I think it's really when you look at the panelists that you've asked to be on in this group, Jamie, it's interesting that we have a patient, we have an advocate, and we have a clinician researcher. The perspective and patient empowerment it can be such a wide perspective. Each one of us is going to come to that definition a little bit differently. And I think for me, when I answer the question, I'm going to come at it from the position of an advocate. I think most people who know me know that I spent the last 8 years trying to figure out the drug development and approval systems here in Canada so I could be a better advocate. And I actually have to say it's been a good time to get involved in this area, because what I've learned is that researchers, manufacturers, and regulators are all beginning to realize and understand the importance of patient data in discovering, testing, and approving innovative therapies for diseases. And nowhere is this more important or more evident than in the rare disease space. With current advances in medical technology, patient data is becoming more important in determining where to focus research, how to approve, and how to fund new therapies. Much of that data is already available and being stored in filing cabinets, hopefully more likely in electronic medical records. But the opportunity for patients to provide even more information, to enable researchers to discover better therapies, to discover disease modifying or disease reversing therapies, or even eventually, hopefully, a cure. That opportunity is at our door. So I'm going to go big with my definition, and I'm going to say, to me, patient empowerment through the use of aggregated, ongoing, patient-reported information and data that already exists, like the history of disease and the disease progression in our clinicians' files, will be the key to the future direction of healthcare in this country and to earlier access to treatments for our patients.
Whew.
That's my definition.
Wow.
I went big.
Yeah. I know this about Joan. She always goes big. It's partly why she has so many commitments on her plate all the time. But wow, all right. So I'll talk about a different perspective. That's really great. Thank you. So Jason, she talked a lot about the information that patients give, but is often held by clinicians as being sort of one of those places where empowerment happens. So can you tell us a little bit more about that and what this means to you?
Sure. I think about it very similarly to Joan, but I also think about that information going the other way too. So I think empowerment is a lot about knowledge and understanding the disease on the patient's end and on the family's end, because I think that knowledge is necessary in order to have input into care and shared decision making. Like, I think you can't make healthcare decisions without that knowledge and health literacy. So to me, the knowledge and the data goes both ways. So it's about clinicians and the people that do study this disease getting the information to the patients at the individual level, but also at the population level. It's our responsibility as clinicians to communicate new findings, research to the patients and to the community. And so I think with that knowledge comes power, and it allows patients to communicate their values better to their clinicians. And like I said, at the individual level to your own clinician, but also at the population level, patients can tell us what they want to focus research on. As you know, that's one of the projects we did was, asking patients, what kind of research do you want done in the future? And it's really important for patients to have input into research that's being done on them. So I think that knowledge and data are the really key factors in patient empowerment, but not just on our end, but also on your end as patients and caregivers.
You're all talking, but you're muted. There you go.
All right. I was trying to be helpful to the interpreters and I forgot. Apologies. So what I was saying is, Jason, you're talking about the knowledge that patients gain through their experience, through their clinicians and hopefully through other support systems as well, that contribute to shared decision making. So let's bring back Bryn into this conversation. Bryn is 17. She is soon going to be making that transition from pediatric care at the Stollery to an adult PH center. So we can imagine that there's going to be some changes that take place. I'm going to give Kim a minute to cue the video that hopefully we have from Bryn. But what would be some of the things that you as a clinician would be thinking about in welcoming a patient who is new to you, but is actually not new to PH? So a little bit different than a new diagnosis. What would be some of the things that you would be thinking about for somebody in a situation like Bryn's transitioning into your care?
Wow, that's a great question. And in fact, something I'm increasingly faced, because when I was in Calgary, all of these patients were new, but now coming to a new city, I'm sort of inheriting other patients that have been around for a while. And so in my practice. And so, for me, the beginning is all about trying to understand patients' values, like what actually matters to them, because, there's a textbook answer to a clinical situation. Like, I know what, should be done, but that's different for every patient. So in order for me to help them make that decision, I need to know what matters to them. And so, the same thing that matters to Bryn may not be the same thing that matters to someone who's later on in their journey or later on in life at the time of their diagnosis. People who have children already when they're diagnosed, their values may be different. So for instance, that may be the quality of life may be more important to certain people than length of life. And that's a really important thing to understand because it influences all of those treatment decisions down the road. So those are one of the things that I'm trying to elicit from people and try to really understand is what matters to you now and what matters to you 5 years from now, 10 years from now. Because without framing it that way, I can't help people make those decisions.
Let's hear a little bit more about what Bryn has to say about this transition that's coming her way. Take it away, Kim.
So now I'm here to talk to you guys about transitioning, whether it be pediatric or the adult world. So my first huge transition was going from a super healthy kid to a medical kid. And it was very, very scary for me at first, but then I started to warm up and I was able to meet my amazing team. But now, since I'm graduating, I have to grow up, and that has to do with my adult care. And that's very scary for me because I'm so comfortable with my team now that it's going to be a bit hard for me to open up to these new doctors, but I have a lot of good things coming up with my adult care, being able to have my own voice with my care. There's a lot of research and meeting a new amazing team, and I'm very excited, and I'm gonna try and have a positive mindset about this because new beginnings are everything. But yeah, so.
Thanks, Bryn. Thank you to Bryn for taking the time to make these videos for us. And it's again, it's kind of commendable that she would make the time when, you know, when she's literally graduating from high school this week. Taria, I'm going to come back to you next. Bryn was talking about having a positive mindset, and we, you know, it's clear that we can see that positivity is one of the tools that Bryn is using in her journey with PH. But, you know, as an experienced patient, I know from, you know, from other conversations with you that it's not always like that, you know, that there are darker days where that positivity is not so easily accessible or doesn't really feel like it's the thing that's, you know, that's happening for you right now. So and maybe you can reflect a little bit about that. And in particular, going back to something that Jason said, just thinking about, you know, the length of your journey now, and the changes that have occurred, what are some of the things that mattered to you then that, you know, like how have the things that have mattered to you changed?
Yeah,
you know,
that's a good question.
This idea of like you being actively engaged in your own care.
And well, that's it. I think like what Bryn was talking about and what Jason was talking about in having that kind of relationship with your clinicians, I think it's really important to recognize that in the rare disease community, and maybe even in PH specifically, we're so fortunate in Canada that we have these small clinics with a small number of clinicians. They all know each other and speak regularly, and they know us. And it makes such a big difference. Like when I was first diagnosed, the conversation was about getting me on IV meds immediately. And I had this tiny baby and I was terrified. I thought he was going to be like smashing all the buttons and it would be like an episode of 24. I'd be trying to defuse this bomb. But, you know, through lots of conversations with my team who got to know me super well, we figured out ways to make those decisions together for what worked for me and what worked for my family and for my own goals and my own journey. And I think that was super helpful and continues to be super helpful, again, through my own journey of finding my own independence in the last few years. That resource of having my team who knows me. I was in and out of the hospital a ton when I was on my own, and through the beginning of the pandemic, having all kinds of issues with my IV meds, and they were right there with me. And it made all of the difference in the world. Had I been in, you know, a breast cancer patient or a heart disease patient or something where, you know, your clinicians have a lot more people to deal with and don't have that time to dedicate, I don't know where I would have been. So I think we are super fortunate in that way, for sure. And I think, yeah, as time goes by, I think what matters absolutely changes. I was really concerned at the very beginning with immediate survival because I was my disease was severe at diagnosis. And then suddenly my life became a bit more normal. You know, I got a job, I was doing like the full-time thing, which I didn't think was going to be possible. But again, that support through my team, just absolutely integral.
So I'm just thinking about, you mentioned this, you know, being able to make decisions about what was going to work for you with your team. And then Joan, you were bringing this perspective about those decisions that get made by, you know, regulators and policymakers and drug manufacturers. And like, you know, those aren't necessarily people that patients are having intimate conversations with about their daily lives on a regular basis. So how do you see the things that matter to patients, the things that are valued by patients, impacting decisions that are getting made, you know, at tables that are often very far removed from patients themselves?
I think it's oh yeah, I was thinking I was muted. I think it's the way that medicine is being, or the refocus on medicine, on healthcare. Healthcare in the future is going to be more patient-centered. It's going to be because of really innovative advances in medical technology. The idea that a disease like PAH, that one person who has PAH is we all know that one person who has PAH doesn't the medicines don't work. The same medicines don't work for the same patient, for each patient. The patients don't respond the same way. What we don't know is why. And really, with the advances in medical technology, those answers are going to be coming, they're still going to be difficult to find, but they're going to be easier to find. And the reality of it is the patient information. It's the stuff that is in us. It is the stuff that doctors have not been able to get access to before because the technology wasn't there to see that information. It's that information that is going to, I have a dog in the house, sorry. It's that information that is going to be key to targeting the right medicine for you in the future. And medicine is going to be more targeted because because that's part of the problem right now, right? We don't know why some IV medicine works or why tadalafil works for some people and not other people, or why it works really good for some people and not so good for other people. Those questions will be answered down the road when we can target therapies, because we know more about what's going on inside each person, and each person's information just contributes. Like when you get information from this person and this person, and now you've got information from hundreds of people all aggregated in one place, you can see things that you couldn't see before because you didn't have access to all that information. So patient information is, we've looked in the past at patients as just, what the clinical information it's in the doctor's office. What is going to happen in the future is, if we can aggregate all that information, researchers have so much more potential to find things they couldn't see before, and address that in terms of where they direct their research. So I don't know if that really answered the question, Jamie, but that's where patient information, the thing that you think is just about you, it really is a part of all. Once it's put together with everybody else's information, it becomes so much more valuable to everybody along the drug development process.
So let's talk a little bit more specifically. I started to see some questions come up, but thank you very much for those questions. Keep putting them in the question box and we'll come to them in just a moment. But before we do that, let's talk a little bit more specifically about one of the most important tools that we have for doing what you're describing, which are registries, which are really just like big databases of information. But registries, patient registries, are often used in a disease area to do what you're describing. So Joe, maybe you could just really briefly tell people what the Canadian PH Registry is and why it matters so much, to patients and therefore to PHA Canada.
Okay, so the the Canadian Patient Registry is an aggregation of all the patient information from across the country. I'm not sure that that's actually completely accurate, because I'm not sure if it actually is completely across the country. But the goal is to aggregate all of that information and house it in one place. And basically what that information does is, with your consent, it allows researchers, drug developers, clinicians to access that information and to investigate new approaches to treat diseases and to improve, like Jason said, your quality of life under the current treatments. There is so much information that we can access now through patient registries that just wasn't available before, when it was just sitting in clinician's office or in hospital records. But I think it's even more powerful than that. Again, I'm going to go pie in the sky here, because that's where I like to be. I like to give hope. I hope it's not overly hopeful. But when you aggregate information from patients, there is opportunities to find patterns that wouldn't have been noticed in clinics. There's an ability to locate patients that meet clinical trial parameters. Researchers are going to they can go to one place and just look and find patients that meet the clinical trial parameters. And they make that decision. If there's patients there, they might want to hold a clinical trial in this country. Or, you know, going forward, maybe the clinical trial can't be held here. But again, everything is going global. Like a patient registry that is basically a Canadian patient registry eventually could be a global patient registry. And instead of 100 or 400 patients in a patient registry looking for answers to disease, we now have thousands. And so anything that we, you know, the more people we have in that we can aggregate information for, the more opportunity we have to find things that previously were unknown. So that I think, and to Jason's point, I think the incidence of side effects in the overall patient population, the quality of life information, which is already documented in patient files, they're all in one spot. So it's not just the clinician who deals with you that understands what's going on with patients. Every clinician can see what's important to patients and can make more informed decisions about really what is important to the patient population, and not you as a patient, but also to the whole patient population. And so it's easy for people like Jason and drug developers and researchers to understand the daily lives of patients and what's important to them.
So Jason, maybe you could get a little bit more specific and tell us a little bit about the kind of information that the registry is collecting and how it's already starting to be used by Canadian researchers.
Absolutely. So as Joe mentioned, it's already running, and we're adding additional PH centers every couple of months. I think when Dr. Swiston talked yesterday, I think we have like 12 or 13 PH clinics that are participating. There's about 2,000 patients with their data in the registry. And we are already learning stuff about what's going on in Canada. And registries are something that we call real world data. So clinical trials are usually interventions like drug treatments or non-drug treatments. And they're usually done in what regulators sort of call like an ideal population. What I mean by that is that there are people who are not necessarily having other medical conditions that can confound the effects of drugs. And so clinical trials are done in like a very small portion of all PAH patients. And when a trial shows that a drug works, we then need to know, does it actually work in the real world, or does it only work in this select group of people that don't have other medical conditions, or for instance, have a certain weight range? So registries provide that real world data. They give us complementary information about, what's going on in Canada. And as a clinician, for instance, we like to think that in Canada, we're at the cutting edge and we're following all of the guidelines, and that most patients are getting at least 2 drugs after they're diagnosed, which we call combination therapy. And that's based on a clinical trial result called the Ambition trial. And we recently looked at how this is happening in Canada. Like, are we using combination therapy in all patients? And we looked at data from when the registry started, but we also in a couple of the centers went back a few years before people were really using combination therapy. And we looked at sort of what's going on in Canada. And we found, in fact, that although, guidelines say everyone should be on combination therapy, that it was not everyone in Canada. And in fact, it took, after 2015, when this trial came out, even in the last few years, it was the majority, but maybe 60% of patients were getting combination therapy after they were diagnosed. And that's the kind of information that's really informative to us, because we can only improve our practice when we know what we're not doing well. There's a lot of reasons why maybe 40% of patients weren't getting combination therapy. Maybe they were a bit older and we were really worried about side effects in those people. So we don't really know that from the registry. But what we do know, now we can describe the problem. And we only knew that about a year ago, because until then we didn't have information at the Canadian level to show us where we can improve. And so I think that's really important. The second thing we're kind of looking at is quality of life. And what does that mean? So in order to tell if something affects or improves quality of life, you have to be able to measure quality of life. And so we're just starting at the bottom or at the beginning with tools that can measure quality of life in patients with PH, like questionnaires that have been developed in other countries. And we've been collecting them in patients, not just at the time of diagnosis, but after we start a new treatment, once a year, twice a year, to see how quality of life evolves through the journey of the disease process. And first of all, we need to just establish whether this tool works in Canadian populations. Like, Canadians aren't the same as people in the UK or France or the US. And so we've just done a study that shows that, like, this questionnaire called the Emphasis 10 does reflect quality of life in PH patients, and we'll be presenting that at a conference in September. So it just shows that this tool actually is meaningful in Canadian patients with PAH. And sometimes you have to start at those very foundational questions and be like, can we measure pH in patients in Canada? Yes. Okay, the next step will be, does adding more therapies improve quality of life? You know, we know it improves the right heart cath values. It might improve how the heart looks on an echocardiogram, but does it actually make people feel better and enjoy a better quality of life? And those are important questions that we haven't answered yet.
So Taria, what do you think needs to happen so that patients can have these kinds of experiences, that they can confidently share information and understand what's going to happen to it, so that they can ask questions to get the information that they need? What kinds of things need to happen for this kind of, you know, exchange of information to take place?
Yeah, I think information is key. It's super cool to hear the real world implications of the Ambition trial. I was in that trial. I started it in 2012. So I mean, that's one of those things. So hearing back about what's happened with what we've participated in, whether that's a clinical trial or whether that's the registry, I think reporting that back to the community is super helpful, because when you get to see that your information is being used in a way that's helping your community, that's really empowering. That's really, that makes you feel good. It makes you want to participate more. I think helping people to understand and answer their questions around what's going to happen with their medical data. Sometimes there's sensitivities around who's going to see my records, what level of access do they get to my information, what are they going to know about me? So providing people with that information, because once you do know what's going in, I think it's a lot less scary. It's not, you know, it's not super personal details, but it's the kinds of information that are going to be super useful in helping to figure out treatments, figure out disease process, things like that. So I think as much as possible, just feeding that information back to people, making sure we're probing them and asking them if they're looking uncomfortable, if they seem uncomfortable, just asking them, what is it that you need to know to help you with this decision? And then letting people know as well how many folks are already in the registry. I think that's really helpful as well, to know that it's not just a couple of people. This is aggregate data from lots and lots of folks, and it's all going together, and it's a way for us to be able to really kind of passively contribute to the research that's happening in our community that's going to benefit us all in the end.
So we have some questions that are starting to come up specifically about the registry. So let's start there. And if folks in the audience have other questions for our panels or comments on anything you've heard so far, I'd encourage you to put it specifically in the Q&A box as opposed to the regular chat. But let's start with a question from Réjean in Quebec, who wants to know if the registry currently exists in all provinces. So Jason, you mentioned that currently there's about 11, 12, 13 clinics in various degrees of implementing the registry across the country. We know that includes a couple of pediatric centers. Do you know sort of, I think we've got, I remember seeing the map from John at Dr. Swiston at the think tank yesterday, seemed to show that we've got pretty good coverage with clinics in most parts of the country participating. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. Then certain provinces are at different stages. So some provinces are still in the process of getting ethics approval from the university, like ethics board. I think there's 2 or 3 provinces that aren't participating just because of resource constraints. Like it's actually a lot of work to run the registry and input the data. But I know like BC, Alberta, Manitoba, there's several sites in Ontario. There's a site in Quebec that's in the process that hasn't started yet. I believe Nova Scotia will be participating. So there are several, but there may be certain provinces where it's just not possible, not logistically possible because of funding and resources. So those are things that, as you know, we talked about, how can we support that? How can some of the bigger clinics or even PHA Canada support the perhaps smaller centers that don't have the resources so that patients can participate? So those are problems and questions that we're aiming to solve in the next year or so.
Yeah, we had a great discussion yesterday at the think tank about how we can collaborate and how PHA Canada in particular can support the expansion of the registry so we can see it be as inclusive as possible, ensure that as many centers as possible are participating. So there was a little bit of talk about, Joan was talking about scaling these things up to a global level. And I know this question has been asked about the Canadian registry in the past, like, is this a tool that can be scaled up and be used at a global level? So we have a question from Beth who wants to know, so like, let's say we want the Canadian registry to go global. Would individual patients have the ability to decide if their information gets included at a global level, or could they restrict it to access to Canadian researchers only? And then our second question that's related is like, if you allow people access to your registry data from outside of Canada, does that mean that they have access to your medical records?
Those are fantastic questions. And the first one is perhaps not fully answered yet. This is a concept of kind of a global registry or a registry of registries that has been talked about in the PH research community for a while, but we don't have that yet. And this question is one of the main, I think, barriers to having that happen, is that every province has different laws about health information sharing and what kind of data can be shared. And so I think it's really important to note that in the vast majority of the registry centers, the data that's collected is not identifiable. So what does that mean? It means that your name's not in there. It means that your address isn't in there. Your date of birth it's not usually in there. Usually we have just the year and the month of the birth, so so that you can't directly identify someone in terms of where they're from. And so the data is also about your disease. So it's not completely anonymous, but it's fairly de-identified so that someone can't link it to your bank account or something like that. So it is protected, and it's held in university computer servers that are secured, and so that even if there was a data breach, there's no way for your actual medical record to get out there. So it's not the same thing as like the results of all of your tests with your healthcare number on it. So that's really important to understand, is that the registry is not being used as an electronic medical record. It's de-identified information that's taken from your medical record, specific things like when was your heart cath done, how high is the pressure, what kind of medications are you on, and there's just a number assigned to each patient. And it's only linked to your personal information by your physicians. So it's held in a way that's secure, that protects patients' information. The second part of that question about, if it's ever shared globally, what would be shared, and that remains to be determined. It may just be what we call aggregate data, so summary data of the patients that would be shared. So we might not say, here's data from 2,000 Canadian patients. It would be like, here's the summary data of those 2,000 patients. So on average, this is their age. X% were women. The average pulmonary pressure was 50. Those are the kinds of data that may be shared. That's something we call like aggregate data, or so it's data about the data. All that to say is that these questions need to be clarified in order for that to happen. But if we can do that in a way that protects privacy and health information, I think it would be extremely powerful for the reasons that Joan and Taria talked about, is that, with increasing numbers, we have more power to answer important questions. We're not talking about 1,000 or 2,000 people, we're talking about 10,000 or 20,000 people. And that's something that has never been done in a rare disease before. And so we're on the verge of being able to do that in the next maybe 5 to 10 years.
Great, awesome, thank you. Beth, I hope that answers some of your questions. Really important, because this idea of giving over our personal information is a little bit scary, right? That can cause people some very understandable concern or anxiety. And so I think asking these kinds of questions and having an opportunity like this to talk about what does it really mean to be in the registry, to have my information shared, to contribute to global research is really important. So thank you for those important questions, Beth. So we've got a couple more questions coming to us from our ambassador team out in Ottawa, Jane and Joan. So Joan Paulin, you were mentioning, we were talking about the way that this information and what matters to patients gets used in making decisions about health policies and what drugs get funded, what treatments come to Canada, things like that. So Joan Gibson is asking, how important is the role of patients for advocating for access to new drugs and treatments? What's the role for patients in that process?
I think if we, that's kind of where PHA Canada, that's kind of the start. It's unfortunate that we have to access, we as patients and advocates have to access for, or have to advocate for access to medication. That's it. I'm going to just turn that question around slightly and say, the other thing that's really key about what is going on in the rare disease space right now is the idea that when a new drug is approved in Canada, that all patients across the country get access to that drug equally. That doesn't mean every patient gets access to the drug, but it means that every patient in every province has the ability to get that drug once it's approved. And basically, I think as advocates, anybody who's been an ambassador or an advocate or has gone to Queen's Park here in Ontario, it's called Queen's Park. That really is what we've been doing for years, is to try and get that drug approved more quickly and in the province that we live in. And it's really unfortunate that because of the decentralized governments and the fact that we have provincial governments that do our drug funding, public drug funding, that is not available. Like the idea that access across this country is not equal, and sometimes some provinces can wait, a year after another province has got access to that particular medication. I mean, I think that's unfortunate. I think that's something that the rare disease community understands as being not just something that's PH related, but that is untenable for all our rare disease communities. And so I'm going to bring something else another thing into the equation here, which is the Canadian Rare Disease Strategy. That is another really big topic right now within the political federal and provincial governments across this country. The federal government is trying to develop a national rare disease strategy, and that strategy hopefully will include, potentially could include, a national drug formulary. Again, this is kind of, like Jason said, there's a lot of talk about a lot of these things, how they actually if they will actually ever come to fruition. That's what we're fighting for now, is equal access, to be able to basically get drugs approved for patients as soon as they're available, and make them accessible to all patients across this country under the advice of a clinician. Does that make sense?
I wonder, can I jump in and add to that a little bit?
Yeah.
Thanks. It's something that I've done with PHA Canada. I also work in an advocacy space. And I have to say, like, there is just so much power in putting a human face on an issue. I think having patients involved in those advocacy efforts is so important, because if you have PHA Canada go to an MLA or go to a decision maker, and bring these stories forward, it's super powerful. If you have PHA Canada go forward with patients and with families to tell their personal stories, it just has that much more impact. So when you're engaging in those advocacy efforts, just know that your efforts are so important and really, really impactful.
For sure. I mean, I see it all the time, right? Whether you're telling your story in the media, at an event, to your neighbor, or to a decision maker, those stories are what make change. It changes people's minds, it changes people's perspectives, it changes what people understand to be important, and it impacts the way that they move through the world, whether it is the way they interact with the next person that they meet who perhaps has an invisible disease that they've never heard of before, or whether it's the kind of decisions you make about how drugs are going to be, made available through a national rare disease drug strategy. All of those decisions are important, and they're all impacted by the stories that we hear from other people. So yeah, telling your stories could not be more important, for sure. All right, we only have a few minutes left. We've got another question that I'm going to sort of dovetail into our final question for today's chat. So the question from Joan in Ottawa is, we were talking about the resources that patients need in order to, understand their disease, help make decisions for their treatment, just live their lives as best as possible. So Joan's question is, what resources out in the PH community do you find most helpful? And the question that I'm going to dovetail is to say, specifically over this next week, there's a whole opportunity to access a whole bunch of different kinds of things. So what is it based, thinking about this conversation we've had today, what are you looking forward to, or what is out there at conference that you might be able to, how would you encourage people to use what we've talked about today as a way of approaching conference, that in a way that can be helpful to them, and it might, if you can comment on Joan's question as well about, how that relates to other resources in the community that you think are useful, that would be great. So I'm going to start with Jason. Sorry, that was a convoluted way of saying that. I'm going to say it again, Jason. How can participants apply learnings from this discussion to their conference experience or any other sort of PH resources that you think are really valuable for empowering patients and their families?
That's a good question. I mean, I think you kind of hit the nail on the head before when you said it's about the individual experience. So there's data, but then there's like the human face to that data. And I think we can spew out numbers as doctors, but those numbers don't mean anything if you don't put a face to it. So learn from each other during the conference, like hear other people's stories and sort of take those other perspectives into your own lives. I think the other thing to do is hopefully this session sort of inspired those people that had any concerns about like registry or data. It's actually empowering. It's not like someone's using your data to achieve their own goals. It's that your goals can be heard through your own data, and you can achieve the goals of the community by contributing your information to help solve these problems. That's the only way that we learn and move forward. And so I hope that with these excellent questions about like data privacy and security, that may perhaps help assuage any concerns about that. But talk to each other, like talk to people who may be participating in the registry or in other clinical trials if you have any concerns about that. I think, like I said, in terms of learning more and knowledge, there's lots of resources that you can find on the internet. And in fact, we did a study last year looking at which information websites on the internet were actually good ones. And so I can send that paper out too. But basically all of the pulmonary hypertension associations had the most reliable and accurate information about the disease. So of course, things on the internet are not always true, but if you go to reliable resources, you can stay up to date. So I think PHA Canada, PHA in the US, and PHA UK had some of the highest rated websites out there. So I just encourage you to try to learn as much as you can. Because sometimes you find out things that we don't know about as clinicians, and you can bring those to your physician and be like, hey, I heard about this, or I heard about this trial going on. Have you been approached about to run this trial? Because I'd be interested in participating if you could do it. So sometimes you hear about things before we do. So just keep trying to learn, and we try to learn from you.
I'd love to see that paper, Jason.
Sure, I'll send it out.
Great. All right, Joan, to you next for your final thoughts on resources and what people can get out of conference.
I think I'm basically gonna repeat pretty much what Jason said. I add something I think that's just going to give you more work, Jamie, which is kind of what I generally do. I think that PHA Canada is. I mean, we know that this is the way that the drug development is going, and it's important that to educate. Part of our mission is to educate patients, and I think part of that education going forward will be improving patient understanding of words like what are patient reported outcomes, what is the patient registry, what are biobanks, and what should we have a biobank, words like real world evidence, why are they important, what do they mean? And so I think as an organization, that is something that PHA Canada will be doing going forward. In terms of what Jason said, I think my hope in presenting the information that I did today, and like I said, I kind of was pie in the sky, I think, but I really feel like, and Nicole said it at the beginning of the session, as a community, we work better when we work together. We are a strong and close community. and we support each other. When you hear words like patient registry or biobank or patient reported outcomes or clinical trial, I hope now your ears will perk up and you'll ask yourself, what can I do to support the advancement of knowledge of this disease, not only for myself, but for my community? And in the end, that is what I think patient empowerment is.
Well, thank you. All right, Taria, some final words from you.
Yeah, I think I spoke to this a little bit before. I think really just collecting as many of those strategies as you can and just building up your toolbox of things that you can do to help you in your daily life are super helpful. And there's a bunch of that through conference. So we've got, sessions on yoga, on nutrition, on exercise, on financial planning, on building relationships with your caregivers. I think all of these really help to make up those strategies that can really help you move through your life in the best way possible. I would also be remiss if I didn't make an explicit shout out to the nurses. And no offense to Jason or my doctor, the doctors have a really specific and important role. But in terms of like that day-to-day management support, those quality of life questions, and being that first point of contact, Lisa, Connie, Kelly at the Vancouver clinic are amazing. And I know I've met a lot of the nurses from the other clinics as well, and they are just the most fantastic supports. So really lean on them, make use of them, call them up, have them help you out. Sorry if I'm giving you more work, guys, but they can really help, I think, patients and families in moving through a lot of those decisions and the day-to-day supports. So thanks, guys.
Yeah, and the Canadian PH Community Survey really reflects that, right? I mean, it told us very explicitly that that folks have really draw a huge amount of emotional support from their PH teams, from their docs, as well as their nurses, for sure. I mean, I think we know that just from the experiences of the community, and also from PHA Canada and from each other. So so all of those relationships hopefully get strengthened through a conference experience by being able to be in sessions and in conversation like this with one another. And in some of those smaller sessions, like Joan Gibson mentioned, there's sometimes the smaller sessions are even nicer because you get to have more intimate conversations sometimes. So I really hope that people can find something for themselves in the program. We really work hard to try and make sure that the things there's stuff available that's appropriate to people, because as much as we talk about, the PH community, there's a lot of diversity within this community, a lot of different kinds of experiences, life experiences, contexts in which people are making different kinds of decisions. And so empowerment is going to look different to everybody. And so like Taria says, you really have to collect strategies that are going to work for you, and hopefully by connecting with other people who are like you or in similar situations to you, you can learn from each other and figure out what those strategies are going to be. I think we've heard a lot today about some of the things that are going on, I think, behind the scenes that we don't always see. Conference connections, meetups, these are things that, you might be really aware of that PHA Canada is providing and that the community is participating in on a weekly basis. But there's a lot of other things that go on behind the scenes. Our support for research, our commitment to things like the registry and to the nurses committee and to the medical committee, and making sure that that collaboration is benefiting the entire national PH community across the whole country. PHA Canada is a voice sometimes for the patients who can't be there to tell their own story for whatever reason. So hopefully PHA Canada is there to represent and to advocate for those folks when they can't do so themselves. And our ambassadors are a huge part of that. So again, I just really want to welcome all of our new ambassadors, commend and thank those that have come before you, including Joan and Taria and Sonia and Nicole. And, ambassadors are just, really instrumental to building that awareness, engaging all of you out in the community, and ensuring that your stories are told, that you're sitting at those tables when decisions are getting made, and that you feel confident and able to really meaningfully participate in all of these things that are ultimately there and happening to hopefully benefit you. You know, we should feel like that. You should feel like that. You should feel like this research, this, you know, all the work that PHA Canada is doing is about you. And so I want to just again thank all of our ambassadors for their leadership and for your work with PHA Canada. And then finally, I'm going to end us really pretty quickly here on time. I just want to acknowledge and thank our panel today. Bryn, congratulations again on your graduation. Thanks so much for making time for us. Joan, Taria, and Jason, I was really looking forward to this discussion with you three in particular. So thank you so much for sharing your wisdom with us, taking time out. Jason, you have a new baby at home as well, and yet you are with us always, it seems. So thank you so much. The commitment and the dedication by folks in this community is just really, really unbelievable. So thank you very much to all of you for being with us today. We've had a really great turnout this morning. I really appreciate you taking the time. I appreciate the sun, the like warm vibes you've been sending to Vancouver. It's brightened up. I'm really looking forward to tomorrow. If you're anywhere in the Lower Mainland, we really hope you'll come out to Garden Park and join us tomorrow. And then throughout the week in Ottawa, in Toronto, in Winnipeg, and Calgary. Anyways, I'm gonna miss somebody on the list, but there's events happening throughout the country. So please do come out and meet your community. You know, the friendships that you will form are unlike any other relationships that you will find in your life. So thank you very much, everybody. And don't forget, we're gonna have a half-an-hour break now. So this is where we would stop for applause for our wonderful panels. And I'm just gonna clap on behalf of our audience. I see lots of compliments in the chat box. So take a moment, please, and respond to your fans in the chat box. But right now, I'll just thank you again for being here. Remind you that we're going into a half-an-hour break. And then at what time will it be? In Vancouver, it will be 11 o'clock. In Ontario, it'll be 2 o'clock. I trust you can all figure out your time zones, but you can look at your outline that's in your kit for guidance. And we've got breakout sessions coming next. Our fabulous Mythbusters, where you get to actually ask your questions, all your questions directly to your healthcare providers, and then also a dedicated session to CTEF. There'll be another break after that, and then our last set of concurrent sessions later today will have coping with chronic illness in English, oxygen therapy for PH patients, a panel discussion in English, and then finally a simultaneously interpreted session on exercise and nutrition with a dietitian and a physiotherapist. So I hope you'll come back and join us throughout the day, and we'll see you again next week. All right, thank you so much, everybody, and have a great time at conference. We can't wait to see you. Thank you so much, everyone. Bye.